The Final Destination movies are known for their crazy Rube Goldberg machine-like deaths that take place all because one person had an equally crazy premonition. The premonition scenes from the Final Destination movies have become iconic in their own right, some even to the point of meme, at least when it comes to driving behind a log truck. The premonition scene is the inciting incident for each movie in the franchise. Without it, the unlikely psychic wouldn't have disrupted Death's design, making him circle back and claim those lives. These sequences kick off the movie and get us primed for crazy violent deaths, and they also provide clues to the order in which death will circle back. Many people have ranked the individual deaths from this franchise. I am going to simply rank the premonition scenes from the Final Destination franchise, because I feel like they very much set the tone for the entire movie. They're super important, they're super iconic. And in this case, I do have kind of specific criteria in which I am grading these premonition sequences. So for me, what makes a Final Destination premonition so scary is the realism factor. So I'm thinking of how much is this based in reality? Will I find myself in this kind of environment soon? Do I find myself in this kind of environment often? How inherently dangerous is this thing just on its own? All of this in mind, I'm going to start with my least favorite premonition scene, which is actually, unfortunately, from Final Destination Bloodlines. I mentioned this in my review of the movie, but this was not my favorite premonition scene. It's just all too obvious. We're presented with the sky view, which is a death trap of a building. One elevator and one set of stairs is the only way up or down this thing. Like, fuck that. I would have turned tail as soon as I saw that like elevator attendant stuffing the elevator past capacity. Like, I'm never gonna find myself in a place like this, not with my fear of heights. Although it feels like the filmmakers maybe kind of had that in mind and made the deaths super fun and bombastic to kind of match the semi-unrealistic situation. And it's not even that unrealistic, it's just very specific. This is a very specific situation that you have to find yourself in, and you wouldn't even like find yourself in this situation. You would put yourself in this situation because you have to make the choice to go to a place like this. And knowing me, I would make the decision not to, which is why it's ranked last. Next on the list is The Final Destination, or Final Destination 4 if you're so inclined. It's slightly higher only because a racetrack is a place that people go, and it is inherently pretty dangerous. Lots of flammable things, dangerous tools. It's a fast-paced environment where mistakes can happen easily and cause major damage. Plus, you have cars crammed onto a track racing each other at high speeds. It's all very dangerous just on its own. Do I frequent the racetrack? No. Have I ever been to a racetrack? Also no. So I can acknowledge the dangerous environment, but it's not a place I would likely find myself. Again, like the sky view, it would have to be a deliberate choice for me to go there. So I can just as easily choose not to go. And as for the individual kills, honestly, the ones in this sequence are not very inspired, in my opinion. And to me, it never really holds up fully when you make a movie like this with like the 3D gags in mind. So this next one may surprise. It does surprise me. But it's Final Destination 3. So the third is my overall favorite Final Destination movie. But the premonition scene just, for me, is not quite as scary as some of the other ones. That said, I am a roller coaster girly. I've been on many a roller coaster, and I think about this movie damn near every time I get on one. And that's a real thing. I don't really know why I think that. Maybe it's an intrusive thought. Maybe it kind of makes the coaster just that much scarier. I'm imagining a horrible situation in which the hydraulics rupture and we all die. But those things are dangerous. And I'm always especially nervous to go on one after they've had the ride closed for a little bit and they've been like running test runs. I'm never gonna be on like the first the first go around after it's been closed for a little bit. But the main reason for Final Destination 3 Premonition being a little bit lower is because, again, getting on a roller coaster is a choice. That's really important to me, I guess, when I'm thinking about these premonition sequences. So like, if I'm that nervous, I can choose not to get on the roller coaster. But the individual deaths within this are quite scary though, and relatively unique for everyone being like in one very specific kind of situation where your main kind of like source of death would probably be being thrown from the coaster, right? They get quite creative. The scariest bit for me especially is when the coaster gets stuck in the loop-de-loop. In that scenario, I'd almost prefer just being separated at the middle. At high speeds. Don't get me stuck. Don't get me stuck like that. In the number 3 spot is Final Destination 5. This and Final Destination 2 kind of increase the scariness of the premonition for me because driving, being on the road is something I do often. A lot of us do often, and I'm especially scared of heights. So being in a situation where a bridge is collapsing is truly terrifying, and there are a lot of height related deaths in this premonition. A lot of people falling a huge distance into water or hitting like bits of the bridge below. Even if you do hit the water, it's like that's like hitting concrete anyway at that height. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And I think the only reason this one didn't quite make it a little higher than something like Final Destination 2, which also takes place on a road, is because I'm from Florida, and specifically I'm from the West Coast Central. If anyone's ever visited in this area or used to live here, maybe you're familiar with the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. So while the bridge in Final Destination 5 is quite scary, I feel like no other bridge I've driven on thus far is quite as nerve shredding as driving on that, especially on a windy day. So that's gonna make Final Destination 2 my number 2 pick, because this involves driving on the highway, which is way more common, at least for me, than driving over a bridge. And even though I tend to avoid the highway as much as possible, like in my everyday driving, this easily wins for the most realistic of the premonition deaths, in my opinion, especially since you have all kinds of people on the road, some not driving as safely as others. The domino effect that a crash like this can cause is terrifying, and it's like it could be happening ahead of you and you might be hurtling at it at highway speeds without even realizing before it's too late. And all of the deaths in this are really scary and obviously last in our brains as we all instinctively move if we see a logging truck up ahead of us. So normally Final Destination 2 would be in the top spot for me because it kind of checks all of the boxes. Like, the deaths feel really realistic. It's a situation I find myself in often. If I had done this video a couple months ago or like last year, Final Destination 2 would be in the top spot. But lately, it's the first one for me. With all of the ridiculous cuts to the FAA and like the beginning of this year, seeing all of those news stories about planes crashing and all that scary shit, like real scary shit happening, that just makes this premonition scene feel more real. And normally I wouldn't be so affected by this premonition scene just with those news stories. While it's tragic and it's awful, I don't fly very often. So at least I could feel a little bit comforted in the fact that I won't find myself on a plane anytime soon, except I will. This year I'm going to Texas for Fantastic Fest, and I'm still going back and forth in my mind as to whether I'm going to drive or not, because I'm that scared of getting on a plane right now. And I know if I choose to fly, all I'm going to be thinking about is this premonition scene. But this premonition scene happens relatively quickly, actually. In rewatching all of the premonition scenes, this is one of the faster ones. Things are super chaotic, loud and windy, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on a lot of the time, but our brains kind of make up for a lot of stuff. Like, you can imagine what's happening. This kind of scenario feels like one of the worst and scariest ways to die, in my opinion. So for now, recent change, this is number 1. So that's my ranking of Final Destination premonition scenes specifically. I would love to hear which is your favorite in the comments below. Tell me what your favorite is and why is it Final Destination 2. I feel like that's gonna be a very popular answer. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon with a new video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.